Okay, so I don't know, man. I wanted to make this video because even though nobody's probably gonna see this, and I'm just fucking bored, I guess. I don't know, but I keep getting this. I don't know what it is. It's sort of a deja vu, but every single person now seems to think that the game is just every new character, right? It's a very everybody fucking thinks apparently now that every new character is super overloaded and they have better versions of old characters, kits and blah blah blah. And this video just sort of, I guess, what's even the word? It sort of just took it to another level of just, you know, kind of just kind of ridiculous, like even more ridiculous than everything else. And I just wanted to fucking respond because even though nobody is probably going to see this, I just want to get my thoughts out there because it's just so annoying. Everybody fucking circle jerking about, like, oh my god, Akshan has, fucking permanently, fucking Kha'Zix stealth and blah blah blah. Like, such ridiculous. Or like, oh my god, his R is like a better version of Caitlyn's R because, you can move while doing it. Like, it's the most retarded. It's so ridiculous. I don't know. So I'm gonna get into this. I fucking can't stand the notion that every new character is a better version of old characters, and that they just that they're ruining the game, and that all the old characters can't compete. I mean, let's literally take Udyr from 5 months ago, fucking running into Samira and Yone and all the new champions, and just right clicking them. They can't do shit. Like, that's like, what the fuck is? Okay, I'm just gonna start this. I'm done.
Go off with a very important question. What makes a game have longevity? I mean, look, one way or the other, regardless of how you feel about the current state of League of Legends, for it to be one of the top games in the entire world for basically an entire decade now as well, it means that Riot has done something remarkable, because there have been other releases said to challenge League for its top spot, and they did for a little while.
Oh, by the way, I have nothing against this guy, Exil. I've watched his videos. He's cool. I know that I'm fucking, nobody's really against this, but I just want to say that I don't, no hate toward this guy. I think he makes great content. His, everything. I think, yeah, I think he's good. I have no hate toward him at all. I think he's, a good guy, good content creator.
Games like Overwatch, before it was ever released, was dubbed the League Killer, and it had a very realistic chance to be way bigger. And we know how that ended up. Now, keep in mind, that's not to say that other games aren't great, and some of these top games that we've seen on Twitch over the last couple of years are very good games. Overwatch, Apex, PUBG, Fortnite, Rainbow Six, Sea of Thieves, GTA. These games are awesome. And this year, by the way, League is usually not even the top category on Twitch, with Riot's other game Valorant being very popular, GTA 5, Apex, Warzone, Minecraft, and Just Chatting most of the time are right up there, if not surpassing League for that top spot. The constant and consistent changes have brought new and exciting content to this game each and every season. Players might like to generalize about different eras throughout the game's history, and right now in the modern era, you will hear players compare.
I'll get into this more later, but he talks about this, all the, these changes that keep it fresh and it's good. And then he goes into the whole champions thing, and he says that, the champions are ruining it, and the champions are alienating the old player base and all this shit. But how is it not alienating the old player base by, for example, Gunsu's Rage Blade being being changed to where it doesn't really work on, like, how is that not alienating, Kog'Maw players, or fucking, I don't know, Varus, Varus doesn't fucking ever build Rage Blade anymore, right? I don't understand, and again, I'll get into it later, but his, you know, assumption that, champions new overloaded quote unquote kits, and then compare them, to stuff like the new Rage Blade, and being like, oh well, the new Rage Blade is fine because it keeps the game fresh or some shit, but the champions aren't, even though they're. I mean, I don't know. That's just one thing that I'll get to
Seasons 9 through 11, and say that it's mostly been the same thing. Not that much has really changed over the last few years, right? Well, actually, a lot has. If you don't believe me, just check out this clip. Here we have something that doesn't look that old at first. I mean, the map looks roughly the same, it's just Gosu playing Ezreal back in late 2018. This was only 2.5 years ago. But then you look at it for a second and you realize, wait, this is the old Ezreal. He's been updated since then. You also realize that this is the old Morgana. She's also been updated. There are no alcoves on this map. There are no elemental maps with Infernal, Cloud, Ocean, and Mountain Soul. The items have been completely reworked, and he's using Kleptomancy, a keystone rune that no longer exists. It blows.
Doesn't make any comment about the alcoves or any other, like, the item system being completely different, or, you know, for example, actually Ezreal's a great example. Ezreal basically doesn't even have, I mean, Conqueror is his keystone, but it's, I mean, compare Conqueror to Kleptomancy, it's not even close, bro. I mean, if they were to fucking bring Kleptomancy back this patch, Ezreal would jump 3%, 4% win rate, I guarantee that. So, once again, just these changes that I don't see the difference between the champions, and big changes like this in terms of alienating the old player base, or making the game too complicated, or, you know, making old champions that people liked, you know, different in ways that they don't like. It's just, I don't see the correlation, but yeah.
Blows my mind how every year this game changes so much that it becomes unrecognizable for those who haven't played in just a little while, a couple of years at most. It's also a fair argument to distrust Riot and their changes to your favorite game, and this is where we reach an impasse. To say that Riot should be able to just perfectly balance this is as silly as saying League of Legends, or any other video game for that matter, is a perfect game. Because a video game can never really be perfect. It can never please everyone, but it should be able to please its core player base. The definition of a game with good longevity is
Another thing right there, when people talk about, you know, the Aurelian Soul changes or other things, you know, not appealing to the core player base, that's kind of, or like skins being released for, you know, Lux and shit, right? Those by definition are being done for the core, maybe not the core player base of that character, but so many more people are to, like, can, I mean, for Silas, actually, yeah, let's go to Silas. Silas, after getting the his mini rework at the beginning of season 10, every Silas player was like, "Oh my god, this champion's fucking dead. I hate it. It's not playable anymore." Blah blah blah. And then after that change, it was like Silas's play rate was like quadrupled, and he was doing so much better. You know, he was performing so much better in solo queue all across the board, and it wasn't a pro problem, like, etc. Right? So when people talk about this shit, like, uh, you know, that they're not appealing to the core player base by not specifically tailoring to the, you know, 0.7% people that play Reliant Soul, right? The 0.7% pick rate. That just seems kind of distant. Like, when people frame that as being like they're not uh, appealing to the core player base, I just don't understand that. And he brings this up a couple times, but that's just, I don't know. I just disagree with that too.
one that's able to please its core players, and I do think that League of Legends has been able to do that over the last decade until now. And I think there's one huge problem that we have to talk about with League of Legends. This game has a huge issue with new champions. This video is brought to you by
Okay, I'm just gonna skip this. Just a fucking ad. Okay.
Games that never change become stagnant and boring. As gamers, we need new updates. We expect new things to keep us interested. And at the same time, power creep, constant change, overpowered new ideas will leave the old game, the one that you fell in love with in the first place, in the dust. This whole
I just the notion that it's somehow, and again, I'll bring up the Udyr example again. There's other examples, but that's a good, you know, recent one that I'm sure all of you remember that have been playing for the last, you know, year or whatever. But again, take like an Akshan and then have an Udyr just running at him and right clicking. The Akshan doesn't stand a fucking chance. I literally have seen so many, and I'm sure you guys have too, in pro play and solo queue, right? You know, just an Udyr who can just run into the, you know, 10-0 fucking Yone, right? New champion, broken, whatever, blah, 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 and just right click him and he dies. And I know that's not true for every single champion. I know that that's not, you know, like every old champion beats the new champions. But again, like, I mean, look at all the old, you know, juggernauts. Look at Trundle, right? Look at all the, look at the, like, super simple Garen, right? Look at all the super simplified champions. What can Akshan do against a Garen who just silences him and then he gets one shot, right? Or a Trundle who just pillars and then he can't swing away and he gets fucking chomped and he dies, right? Like, there's the the whole thing of saying that, the new champions somehow are like just so much better than all the, and I'll I can admit that, like, yeah, obviously fucking Akshan's passive has more lines than Trundle's, right? Like, I understand that Trundle healing for 2% of his HP when he kills a minion or a fucking, anything, compared to Akshan getting his shield plus double attack plus fucking 3-hit passive, right? All that shit. Like, I get that it's more, but does it really matter when all Trundle has to do is fucking run at him, pillar, block him from swinging, and then just, right click him to death? Like, it's literally just, I don't know. That's just, yeah.
Thing kind of reminds me of a clip from an old Vsauce video. Michael brings up this very interesting philosophical situation where a surgeon would start taking cells from my body and cells from your body and swapping them one at a time. And after a while, the surgeon would finish, and all of my cells would be in your body and all of your cells would be in my body. Now, at what point do I officially, in this process, become you? This is a totally nonsensical question because it could never happen in real life, but the point that he makes is still very intriguing. Would it be after 50% of the cells were swapped? 90% maybe? Or do we need to wait fully until 100% of the cells were swapped for me to officially be you and you would be me? Making so many changes to a video game is kind of like this. Sure, Season 1 and Season 11 League of
Again, he literally said 10 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago that all the changes, all the item systems, and all that shit was a good thing. And now he's saying that too many changes, i.e., what they're doing is too much. So maybe I'm missing part. Maybe I'm missing something on that. Maybe he is saying that there's something else there. But I'm just pointing that out.
Legends share the same name for this game, and they have a similar map conceptually. They even have a few similar champions. But at what
A few similar. I think there's a little bit more than a few similar champions. I mean, yes, there aren't. Kennen, right, is literally the exact same, pretty much down to the wire, with like very small changes. Anivia too. There's a good amount of champions that are literally the exact same, and then there's a bunch of champions that have small right? Tom Kent. Well, Tom Kent is pretty new, but like something along those lines of a Tom Kent work. His kit is still, like he's still doing the same thing. He's not like a different champion, So, yeah.
point does this game no longer become the one that players fell in love with? Let's make one thing clear. I'm not against new champions, although I guess to be fair, I kinda used to be. Let me take you back to last summer, where during the Spirit Blossom event of 2020, two new champions came out, Yone and Lilia. Now, throughout my time playing League, I've played a lot of Yasuo, and specifically in the bottom lane is where I like to take him. It's fun to combo him with like an Alistar or a Nautilus support. So when Yone's kit looked extremely similar to Yasuo's, I thought for sure that he would not only kill the champion since he was just going to be the better Yasuo now, I also figured that I would love playing him. I honestly thought during the champion trailer that he would become my new main, and in the past we saw old champions become obsolete due to a new champion replacing them. Many of the on-hit 80 carries were not going to be meta right after Kai'Sa's release, who did everything they did but better. I'm sure right now you have your own examples in mind of a champion who just replaced an older one. Seraphine and Sona.
Yeah, this is another one. The Seraphine Sona thing. If Seraphine wasn't music, right? If Seraphine wasn't about music, I guarantee you, like, nobody would make the comparison of Sona. Their kits are so different in so many ways. Like, the only thing you can say is like the general thing. Like, by the same logic, you could say that any support is the same because they heal people and boost stats. There's no correlation. The Seraphine is much more about the long range, way more damage based, way more like wave clear. Like, she can do way the fuck more in lane. I mean, she's meant to be a mid laner. She is way more about actually killing people and sort of, I mean, more like a Lux, way more like a Lux than Sona is. And since Sona would probably be more like honestly more like a Yumi, right? Sona just sits next to you, fucking gives you the the movement speed and the heals, and then just sits there, stuns the people, if they walk toward there's not even remotely the same. It's not even close. And if they were not both music based mage / supports, then nobody would make the comparison at all. Their kits, even if their themes are like the same, I'll acknowledge their themes are basically the same. It does not change that their kits are completely different.
Anyone? Maybe Pike and Blitzcrank?
Yeah, Pike Blitz. I did. What kind of how the fuck can you compare Pike and Blitzcrank even a little bit? Blitz is completely about, you hook, knock up, and then your AD carry just insta burst them, or you insta burst them, or you're way more about pick, right? I mean, Blitz can hook somebody from the middle of mid down to like the fucking brush. Pike's hook only pulls them a specific distance. It doesn't pull them straight to him, and it's way slower. He has to wind it up, and it's just way the fuck harder to hit, and it doesn't pull as far. So, and then again, literally nothing else. The only thing that in their kit that even remotely resembles each other is the fact that their W gives them movement speed. That's and it's not even yeah. Just there's no correlation here at all.
So was I right about Yone completely replacing Yasuo? No, I was wrong. Turns out that both can exist and still fit within this game. When it came to me playing him though, yeah, I mean I gave him a try and picked him up, and I would estimate that I have about 25 games or so on the champ, but I didn't take a liking to him the way that I originally thought. Instead, something surprised me even more. As a non-jungle main who doesn't like the look of the champion, there was no chance that I would actually give Lilia a try. I mean, look at this character, this dopey looking crackhead half-deer girl thing. I'm not gonna like that champ. Well, 1 year later, Lilia might actually be my favorite champ to play in the entire game. It still blows my mind to this day. I remember the first game that I tried her out. It was about 2 weeks after her release, and it was just a normal game, so it didn't matter anyway, and I thought, whatever, let's give it a go. And it went really well. For whatever reason, the champion's kit just clicked with me, and I think she is incredibly fun to play. Recently, she also received some buffs and can now be reliably played in the solo lane, which is something that made me like her even more. But before that, I played her a ton last year in the jungle, despite not being a jungle main, because I really did enjoy playing her that much. This situation changed my perspective on new champions instantly, because I would have never guessed that just based on the champion's looks and theme that I would have enjoyed her. It's a classic case of more than meets the eye. This kind of thing is very good for Riot and very good for League of Legends. The release of Lily.
I mean, is he saying that it only counts if it's? I mean, are people not having the same thing with Akshan or any of the other Like, I mean, what's the point here of saying that, oh yeah, new champions are better, and this one was better for me? It's, cool. What's the I mean, are other people not allowed to have the same thing happen to them? Or are people not allowed to fucking see Gwen's theme of being the little fucking cutesy doll and not, and not thinking that they're gonna like her, but then they do, and then, same thing happens as he did with Lilia? Like, I don't understand what he's saying where he thinks that Lilia is good because he enjoys her, but then later he goes on to say how all these new champions are way more broken, and I don't understand that.
Lilia has kept me interested in League of Legends more than
And Gwen hasn't kept other people interested, or what? I don't understand.
Would be if she never came out. I am sure there's plenty of you that have enjoyed some of the new champions that have come out over the last 6 months. It may be the only reason that you're still playing right now and even watching.
Yeah, pretty much. Viego, Yone, Gwen to an extent. Yeah, basically.
Watching this video. This is why this video is not being made to tell you that all new champions are inherently a bad thing. The real issue comes from how they're being implemented.
No. No, please. Please, not another new champ, right? I still haven't recovered from last year.
Faker has potentially found his new champion, Gwen. It's come naturally to him. He hasn't lost a single game on it yet.
Ow! Ugh.
This champion was insanely weak.
This is after the hotfix buff.
People don't understand, bro. These champions get released, right? And they're their win rate's low because they're brand new and they're not the easiest champs. So they get hot fix buff over and over again, and like Riot wants to sell the champion and skins. He's going to be meta. He's gonna be so disgusting. Bro, like it's another added ban. Actually.
Almost every new champion over the last year and a half gets put into the game in pretty much the worst way possible. By the way, that also extends to some of the reworks as well. When Mordekaiser first got reworked, his day one numbers were disgusting, and he cleaned house.
Can anyone tell me what else they're gonna do? I mean, they did for a while. They did the whole, training wheels thing, quote unquote, where they just make a champion purposefully OP, or maybe not OP, but like very good to get them to that average win rate on release, and then nerf them accordingly. And then that ended up just having Set and other champions in Season 9 and, first half of Season 10 and even Season 8, where they're just like 56% a week after release and shit like that. So is it better to, do that and have the champion be deliberately OP because people don't know how to play him, or do this where a champion is released, quote unquote, where they're supposed to be long-term balance, right? They release at like 42%, then they climb it to 50 or 51 over the course of a month, right? Which, I mean, is there another way to do it? Because I'm not hearing another way to do it besides that, even though people complain about it all the time.
On the Rift, he had to quickly be nerfed, featuring a day 2 hotfix, and a follow-up hit a few patches later. Nearly every new champion is either drastically overtuned or flat out weak. Now,
I mean, do you think that they're doing this on purpose? Like, Samira was one of the ones that wasn't actually meant to be like a training wheel. She was meant to be a, normal, release 42%, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they literally nerfed her very hard the morning after her release, like very hard. So, and then Akshan, right? Akshan is released at like fucking 30% or something like that. That was very obviously not going to climb to a 50 over the course of a month, right? So, yeah.
I say weak with extreme caution and a huge grain of salt though, because most of the time what we're really dealing with is player skill, but
Akshan, after getting the hotfix buffs, I mean, he still was only like 50%, like the patch after he was released, the full patch after he was like 50%. So if he didn't get those hotfix buffs, he probably would have been like 45, 46. And so how do you think that, I mean, do you think that over the course of the next fucking 2 months, people are going to get a 5% of win rate off of just being better at him? Like, how does that, I mean, he's sort of hard to play. The hook shot's annoying to get, to get used to, but 5%, really? That's, seems like a lot.
We will get back to that in a second. Let's just focus on the ones that were too strong. Viego, Seraphine, Samira.
Saying Viego is a little bit of a stretch, considering he was only slightly too good in mid, and he actually needed to get buffed in his main role, jungle, like 2 patches later. So saying Viego is a little bit too much. Also, Seraphine, not really. She was just skewed towards support, and they wanted her to be a mid laner, so they did hot fixes to make her better as a mid laner. She wasn't really OP. Samira, yeah. I'll give you Samira, yeah.
Aphelios, Pike, Kai'Sa, and Zoe.
Pike, yes. Aphelios, I don't think Aphelios was that great in solo. I think Aphelios was only good in pro play or OP in pro play. Zoe and Kai'Sa, yeah.
Each one of these champion kits are so full of abilities, passives, utility, and damage that there was basically no chance that they wouldn't break the game. And in the case of Viego, he quite literally did. Aphelios started the 200 years meme. Samira continued it into 400 years, but it really all started, and all of this can date back to Zoe. Nowadays, Zoe is in a mostly okay spot, at least much better than her release, given that she was the most overloaded and broken champion we had ever seen on her release.
I mean, some of the champs they reworked were a little bit, I think old fucking Poppy were a little bit more than Zoe, but I mean, I'll grant you that, yeah, Zoe being able to pick up summoner spells is a little bit more than Poppy blocking 50% of the post mitigation damage of every single thing that hit her. So yeah, I'm sure.
Back then, she could do a lot more than she does now, such as picking up a teleport, not even just from enemy champions who used it, but literally from minions. Yeah, that happened. Right after Kai'Sa came out, she completely destroyed the bottom lane meta, and the following MSI saw her rack up a 93% pick ban presence. She was the most banned champion during MSI, with 51 bans. Sadly for Pyke mains, he's brought pretty much nothing but trouble to this game, and he can't seem to stay out of the solo lane either, no matter how hard Riot has tried. Seraphine is just the reworked Sona on steroids.
Nope.
And I don't really need to explain Viego all that much because we're currently suffering right now every day.
Are we? I mean, Viego has not really been dominant. I mean, he's been picked, but he hasn't been, his performance isn't that amazing. He actually gets worse the higher you climb, which is funny because, right, he's most dominant in pro play, yet he's better in bronze than masters, so that's also a weird one. I will give you that, yeah, in solo lane, he was pretty good for a while, but saying that right now, or right now he's complete dog shit because he just got nerfed into the ground, but for the last 3 months, 2 months, he hasn't picked, but he hasn't really been, he's not like fucking Nocturne top mid lane who had like 55% win rates for a patch or two, and it was just unplayable
this season. With these specific champions, we're not just looking at them and saying that they were a little strong or a little overtuned, which by the way is completely understandable and to be expected.
I mean, really? I mean, Samira was the only, it's good that you're showing Samira here because she probably was the only one in the last however long that's been like severely overtuned on release. Like besides, I guess, Set, which was almost 2 years ago. She is not, she was very good, and she literally got hotfixed the morning after. Again, Viego was slightly too good in mid lane, not even in his main role on release. Gwen was terrible. What the fuck else? Akshan, terrible. The reworks, Mundo rework was pretty fucking, or like average, not very good, not very bad. Samira is the only one. Rel was terrible. Like Samira was the only one in recent times that was even remotely close to being like, oh my god, this champion is so fucking OP. Like, what the fuck were they thinking?
With new champions in a game with such an established meta, Riot cannot, will not, and will never be able to completely balance a champion the first day that it comes out. That's unfair to expect that, but that's not what this is. These champions were flat out destructive to the mental of players trying.
What? What champions? Samira was literally hotfix nerfed very hard the day after her release, the morning after. There was like 12 hours of the apparent, what the fuck did he say, terror of players playing against it. Literally like 12 hours, and then she was, down to being pretty reasonable. And then she got nerfed the next patch too. And like the next, and then like what other champion has been even remotely close to that? I don't understand.
To face them. So what's the other side of that coin then? Which champions were the opposite? Well, that's Akshan, Gwen, Rel, and Yuumi. Each of these champions have seen the exact same pattern happen to them, just in reverse. On release, their win rate wasn't just bad, but more or less record-breaking levels of terrible. Just look at these headlines and these numbers. There's no doubt that on release these champions were weaker than they were supposed to be. Yuumi isn't so difficult to play that it even makes sense to have a win rate that low. She genuinely was weak. However, there's a lot more to the story. The main reason these champions saw their win rate in the gutter has almost nothing to do with their numbers. Their numbers were weak, yes, but each of these champions were either somewhat difficult to play or so unique that it required a bit of the spicy Voyboy technology to figure out their optimal build and setup. If you don't believe me, we can just go right back to Yuumi if you want, and we can go check out her PBE footage from the time and all of the release videos. It's easy to see what the major innovation was.
Going Flash, or going Exhaust, instead of Flash or Heal, I guess, would not have brought Yuumi's win rate up like 10% or 12% or whatever it was, whatever it had to be to actually have her be good.
Every single one of these players is using Flash. One of Yumi's biggest strengths is her ability to not have to take flash. It opens up many different possibilities. For high elo play, a good AD carry can take cleanse and use it pretty well, and the Yumi can take heal. Or maybe they can play really aggressive and the Yumi can take exhaust ignite. It doesn't sound like that big of a deal because it's just one summoner spell, but Yumi
Well, it is somewhat of a big deal, but it's not 13%, 14% win rate big of a deal.
is different than other enchanters. She's very different from Soraka, who has to play all the way back in a team fight. Sometimes if you're playing Soraka or Sona or Seraphine, you won't always be in range to use your summoner spells because you kinda have to play so far back due to your lack of tankiness. But again, if Hecarim dives the backline, you're always in exhaust range because you're quite literally attached to the Hecarim. In her case, this one summoner spell makes a huge difference, and it took roughly 2 to 3 weeks for players to figure out it's much more optimal than taking flash.
And she still wasn't good and had to be buffed like twice. So, yeah.
For Gwen, it's not exactly the same thing because there are a lot of different solo laners this season that have taken Ignite Teleport, such as Akali or Camille, but with Gwen, Flash is also not necessary. That little bit of innovation has helped a lot of Gwens get solo kills in lane and still be able to impact the map. She doesn't really need Flash because of her E. On top of that, people didn't know how to abuse her level 1 on day 1 of her release because they didn't even level her E. Look at this footage where both SRO and Huzzy take Q level 1 and both have Flash. That is what everyone was doing right away, but you'll never see this anymore. You take Ignite and TP or Ignite Ghost and start E and get in there and start fighting. What I'm saying is it's not the fault of these guys. It's not the fault of the entire community or of Gwen. It simply takes time for players to figure out what is the best way to play a champion, which isn't really
Number one, the patch after Riftmaker got buff, which was Gwen's best patch by far performance-wise. Most people were still taking Flash, and it had a good, decent, it was like 49.5%, it was like 50% win rate, it was decent. Ignite Teleport was like 15% pick rate, and like 51.5. It was definitely better, but like by 1% to 2% better. I don't know how much the E changed, the E first changed, but I mean, again, she literally got buffed, and was pretty much fine, and then actually got worse, and then only got nerfed because of pro play. Like, she was, if the point here is to say that she was OP after getting the hotfix buffs, or that she shouldn't have got them, or people just need to figure out how to play her, clearly not, because she was, if she wasn't picked in pro, she would have gotten buffed again, like, a month later. So, yeah, no.
really that surprising. For Akshan and Rel, they also saw terrible win rates, but you can nearly just chalk all that up to them being very difficult to play. All of this really does make sense.
Once again, Akshan was like 34% or something like that. If people had just figured out how to play him, he would not have gone from 34 to 50 in the space of a month. That was just not gonna, and again, it's the kind of the proof there is that right now, after the hotfix buffs, after the fucking changes, he's still like 50%, and it's been like a month or more since he's come out. So yeah, once again, no.
Sense. New champions are new. Go figure. But that can't entirely explain a bad win rate, can it? Technically, the enemy Katarina one trick also doesn't know how to play against Akshan, so wouldn't that make them more likely to do bad against him as well? Well, yes, but actually no. In this game, it is way more important to know how to pilot your own champion correctly under generalized circumstances than it is to know how to specifically beat one laning matchup. Shockingly, League isn't just a 1v1 laning game. In fact, a lot of players argue the 1v1 in solo queue barely matters at all because it's such a catastrophe of uncoordinated play. Haven't you ever solo killed Katarina 1 to 2 times and then she walks bot lane and gets a triple kill anyway? The person who is on their main champion, regardless of laning against a brand new one, still has to teamfight against 4 other players. They still have to know how to deal their optimal damage rotation. They still have to put up with the enemy jungler. They still need to know how to play their lane, use their combos, their mechanics, know how to last hit.
I think he's kind of just arguing against himself here by saying that, yeah, it's not really like Akshan being like, I'm not really sure what I think he was actually countering his own point of, he could have said that a player not knowing how to play against him would actually further increase the win rate more than it should be, but he's actually saying the opposite of it actually doesn't. So, yeah, I don't know.
They can pilot the champion extremely well, while the enemy player is just reading Akshan's abilities. This one's pretty funny, but something that you also don't see too often talked about is you have to kind of consider who is playing these champions on day one of the release in ranked as well. I mean, certainly there are going to be people that have put in 30 plus games on the PvE, they've already joined the Akshan's Discord server, they're on the Reddit, they claim to be an expert even though their goal, okay, you know what, I'm not even going to go there, I didn't need to leave that in the script. But that is definitely not the norm. The type of player who is playing a new champion in ranked within the first week is going to be first timing them. And
once again, none of this changes that Akshan was terrible, got multiple hotfix buffs, and was just still average or below average. So, yeah, I don't know what he's even trying to say here.
then when they decide to first time a champion, their mindset about the game and their LP is probably going to be different than the one trick who is playing their main champ. I can promise you, a first time week 1 Akshan cares a lot less about winning than the enemy Katarina one trick with 2500 games on the grind pushing for diamond. That cat one trick will stomp him every single time. And the other guy probably doesn't care that much. These factors really help explain why some of these champions have an abysmal win rate right after their release.
Still doesn't change anything about the fact that he got the hotfix buffs and he was still not OP and he's pretty average, and yeah, he's still not putting forth anything to suggest otherwise.
And it seems somewhat understandable. So what does Riot do in this case? What is their response? More often than not, a pretty poor choice. It's just immediately hotfix buffing them. For Gwen and Akshan, it's deja vu. The exact same thing has now happened twice in a row. Bad win rate, immediately buffed, people get better because they always do. It's a new champion that Riot wants to sell, so they're going to make the champion meta, then they become overpowered, and now they get nerfed.
But this hasn't happened. Gwen wasn't OP, and Akshan isn't OP. I mean, Akshan is OP right now. Maybe next patch or when people get better, I don't know. But it's saying that Gwen was OP was not. I mean, yeah, she got nerfed, but it was because of pro play. She wasn't OP in normal at all. Like, she wasn't fucking good anywhere. She was kind of good. I think she was like maybe like 50% in like Masters Plus at her peak, but she was never even close to OP in solo queue.
Only so many times we can go through this cycle without talking about it critically and asking if there's a better solution. Probably the very first thing that needs to change is the fact that Riot seems really reactionary and emotional to how a champion comes out right away. We can kind of have a hard bound or a threshold on these win rates for the first couple of weeks. I feel like as long as the champion isn't lower than a 35% win rate or more than a 55% win rate after the
55 on day one or like first week? That's like a champ. That champ is gonna get to 70 by the time you're saying that we should actually look into it. Like if if Akshan, I'm not even gonna say anything about that. 35, I can agree with 35. 35 would probably be, like you kind of just leave it alone if it's above 35, and then you reassess later. But 55 is a little bit much, I think.
The first week, I'm not so sure that they should take immediate action. I believe the best scenario is to give it some time. Let players figure out how to play against a champion and play as a champion. I still remember
there is I guess sure there's context where there might, I remember he mentions QSS on Mordekaiser here. But there's just no way that, there might be a champion eventually or a champion in the past that maybe if they're that high, there could be some kind of optimization that the players find out to beat them, maybe, but 55%. That's a lot. That's a lot to say that, people can just figure out how to play against them or play as them or whatever. It's, it's a lot.
Remember back when Mordekaiser was first reworked, and earlier in this video we talked about how he was an easy to play champion that dominated and definitely did have over 2 numbers, but I also remember how people didn't even buy QSS, and when other teammates would tell them to purchase it, their response was always, wait, QSS works on his death realm? We have to remember that not everybody watches champion spotlights or tests things out on PvE or looks at things online or tests.
I'll say it one last time. There's no way that QSS people realizing QSS we bought for Death Realm could have dropped him to not being OP. Like if he was slightly OP, then maybe that would be enough. But it would be maybe like a 1% difference, or like a 1.5 at most. Whereas he was like monstrously overpowered on release.
Things out with their friends to see how brand new champions work before they come out. A lot of people just queue up and play. Something like using QSS against Mordekaiser Ultimate was not widespread information for the first month after he came out, even though it should have been. After just a few weeks of waiting and assessing the champion as we go day by day, we can get a much better understanding of their true power level. What if we could see Yumi's win rate as it was without any buffs whatsoever if players weren't taking flash and weren't buying boots? What if
There's no reason to believe that it would have been better. I mean, there's just no reason to believe it would have been better. There's nothing that would suggest that somehow Yumi going exhaust, ignite, and not building boots would have changed her from being utterly abysmally fucking terrible dog shit fucking awful to being even remotely good, let alone overpowered or, you know, above average.
Gwen's day 1 numbers were using a Doran's Blade start with no flash in E level 1, which is something that every Gwen player is now doing. Imagine if
Then she would be like 44%. And never would have been, never would have seen the light of day in pro, never would have anything. So it's been terrible.
we could see Mordekaiser's win rate if everyone knew that QSS would actually take you out of the Death Realm, and his E is this ability that pulls you so you don't have teammates typing in all chat after dying to him, wait, what is that pull?
Yeah, same thing. There's no reason to believe that small optimizations like that are going to drastically change what makes a character good or not.
What we're really trying to avoid is the fact that it feels like Riot is forcing new champions into the meta, either to sell a skin or an event, or to make their year's worth of work actually.
I mean, really though? Like, name a champion that is not pro-bound that doesn't pretty much instantly get big buffs if they are the same win rate as what Gwen was, or Akshan, or anything. Any champion at all that's not pro-bound. Like, you know, there's no examples of that. That's literally nothing to do with them wanting the champion to be meta or sell skins or anything. That's just they literally just that's how the game works. They just buff the characters that are bad.
Actually pay off and matter. They do spend a ton of time on these champions, so they want them to be relevant and meta, and I can't blame them for that. But at what
Like every other champion. What?
cost? Years later, they have to have so many different mechanics removed that they also kind of waste.
I mean, did Gwen have mechanics removed? Did Rel have mechanics removed? What other champions have been? Yone? No, nothing removed at all. Lilia. I mean, Lilia got a mini rework, but that wasn't. They didn't remove anything. They actually buffed most of her shit. Set was massively fucking broken, and he didn't even get mechanic. Again, Aphelios is just that. Okay, they mentioned this, so you would rather have a character that has too much shit because it's much easier to cut something than it is to add something new, right? If you release something that has way too much shit, way too many tools available, it's very easy to just hotfix / just, you know, take it out of their kit the next patch, right? And there it goes, it's gone. Whereas if you release a champion that has too little things to do, then it's much harder to actually create stuff on the fly when they're already out than it is to just have too much and then cut it later, if that makes sense.
Wasted their time putting them in the kit. I'm trying to also consider Riot's end for a second. Think about how much of a headache something like Aphelios has been for them to get to this point where he's at now. This guy has gone through massive peaks and valleys of power, massive highs and lows.
I mean, not really. He was OP on release, somewhat pro-bound for like a year, and then now he's been buffed back up into being decent everywhere. It hasn't been that crazy for Aphelios.
200 years and that he was a dumpster fire, and now he's at least in an okay spot. There's probably still work to be done for sure, and many of you probably still hate playing against him, but at least to this point he's manageable now, and that's all that matters. But it's been a year and a half to get here. For Akshan, his release numbers looked like this. Yep, not very good, which is why he ended up receiving 2 hotfixes within the first couple of days. Apparently, his numbers were very low on purpose, and here's why.
Huh? Revive, stealth, forwards dash, backwards dash, swing?
He said forwards dash, backwards dash, swing. One ability that is just a swing, he had to say forwards dash. I'm not even gonna, nah, I'm good.
If action cancels the second shot, he gains a burst of movement speed. If you cancel your auto attack, you get movement speed? Why?
Oh my god, another passive, man. Why do they keep making these?
The funny thing is that, like, it's so simple when you actually, like, it's literally just, okay, every 3 attacks, you get you do more damage, you get a shield, and then your autos strike twice, and that's it. It's pretty simple when you actually look at it.
It's passive.
Oh, and the shield duck.
Is this a book? Is it a book? Oh my god.
That champion gets released, the game's dead. I'm sorry, like, I'm gonna go variety stream. I'm not even joking. That's not, it's not like, that's actually scary.
Like, what is that? I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration, but what is it with people, like, how is this not going, how are, like, there's gonna be so many people that are like, oh yeah, new champion, I can fucking play this new champion. Like, the people that are getting bored playing the fucking champion they've played for 8 years, they want to have something new to play. Like, how is it going to kill the game to have something new like this in the game? Like, unless they're like literally just, oh my god, you know, they walk into you and you're dead and there's nothing you can do about it and it's over, right? Like obviously there's limits to that, but if that's the case, then they get nerfed and they get changed and they get fucking, you know, I mean, you're gonna look at Akali, right? Akali has literally had half of her kit fucking removed because of that. So I don't understand why people talk about, you know, shit like this. Like, it's gonna kill the game.
When Ashkan gets a takedown. What? All allies killed by the scoundrel are resurrected.
The revive is super overrated. I'm just gonna say that right now.
Resurrected? What?
Especially with how his kit works, the revive is just so not very good. Like, it's just not. He's so unreliable to actually kill people because all of his damage is like he's so easy to block, so easy to play around, and it's also only really useful late game when he's already basically useless. Like, the only time where he's actually good is in those early skirmishes where revives do literal. I mean, they're already pretty useful, but when you're the fucking when the fucking death timers are like 5 minutes, or I'm gonna get 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, they do virtually nothing. So yeah.
As you probably know by now, this champion has been given everything. Stealth, mobility, mixed damage, on-hit damage, he has a reset mechanic, he has a shield mechanic, he has a movement speed buff, mana...
Yeah, not stealth, literally the highest camo radius in the entire fucking game. Mobility that is incredibly easy to cancel, super long cooldown, and is super slow. And then what the fuck else did he say? Oh yeah, movement speed buff. I mean, it's like you're just throwing all this stuff together, like, oh my god, he has all this stuff, and then you look at it and it's not actually that great, and you know, and you just, yeah.
Regeneration, a way to hunt down enemies, a crazy good Syndra ult type of thing.
Did he just call this aura Syndra ult? I forgot about that. Oh my god. Yeah, man. The ability that gets blocked by quite literally everything in the entire game that is an enemy fucking unit or a monster, is a Syndra ult. That also takes longer, that also has a charge up, and takes like 3 full seconds to even start like to fucking actually shoot them if they're, you know, more than half HP or a quarter HP, is a Syndra ult. Yeah. Okay, uh-huh.
And of course, his controversial revive mechanic on his W passive, not even an ultimate passive. His W passive.
Okay, what's the difference? Him getting it 4 levels later, literally it's the most useless at level 2, level 3. Who cares? Like, who cares at all? Level doesn't, like, having it level 6 for level 2 changes literally nothing at all.
Passive has a chance to win you a game all by itself, or have a
okay, kind of like a lot of other abilities in the game. I mean, fucking Yasuo getting a 5-man knockup and R-ing and then having his team follow up is an instant win. And it's also way the fuck more reliable than this thing, that's for sure. Or like, what's a fucking, I mean, any fucking, you know, fucking Cannon R. I mean, there's so many other fucking crazy wombo combo shits that's so much more reliable and so much better at winning a game than having the slight chance that you're even going to be able to... I mean, the only way this works is if the fucking scoundrel who got a quadra kill literally just walks to the fucking... But also, they have to be incredibly squishy because you're never going to kill a tank or like a fucking Darius who got a quadra kill, that's for sure, even if you're 20-0. Literally, it's the most unreliable thing in the entire game. It's honestly, even if you do get it, it's still less useful because that Darius got the fucking 2,000 gold from killing your team anyways, or 1,500 gold, whatever the fuck it is, from killing your team anyways. Like, he already reaps the benefits of that, and has a massive advantage off of getting that in the first place. Whereas a fucking Cannon R or a Yasuo R or anything like that, it just, the game is just over. You just fucking instantly wipe the entire team, and boom, game's over. Way more reliable, way the fuck better.
Massive turnaround for your team. And Blitzcrank's W passive is a self-slow. Because his...
what kind of what was the point of that? Blitzcrank's W is a self-slow. The passive is... Where's the... Who cares? I'm not even gonna... No.
His kit is essentially 2 different champions in one. Riot erred on the side of caution by outright stating his numbers needed to be lower. The volatility of this revive mechanic meant that he had to be weaker than most other champions on release in terms of his numbers. And right away, this is where I begin to see cracks in what they're saying and doing. There's a disconnect between what they say on social media and how they're thinking versus what actually does get done. I agree almost 100% with everything writers like Jag said about him following his release. They seem to understand the magnitude of this W passive. They were the first to admit that it's a very strong ability and probably kinda broken. So then I agree with their approach to say that he can't have very high damage due to his utility. For crying out loud, we've barely talked about the fact that on top of the revive mechanic, he has near infinite stealth, which players will definitely need.
Infinite stealth that doesn't give you movement speed, like almost every other stealth in the entire game gives movement speed or something, and also has a camo radius of 750. Literally 100 range longer than a Caitlyn auto attack. You can see him coming. Like, come the fuck on, man.
Need a bit more practice on to make sure that they can make the most of it. But after they say this, they're then so quick on the draw to hotfix buff him, which is, like I said,
yeah, they were wrong. Like they thought he couldn't have good damage or other whatever the fuck he was. They were saying he couldn't have, and they were wrong. The revive didn't actually give as much as they thought, and so they buffed him. It's not very hard to understand.
A disconnect for what they've told us. As a community, we're not even entirely sure yet what his best role is, and we're making changes to the...
It's clearly mid lane. Like, look at the stats, it's very clearly mid lane.
Champion. It looks like he's supposed to be a mid laner, which makes perfect sense due to his perma-stealth. It allows him to roam around the map and make some plays, but there's also players like this on EU West. This person has figured out a great way to have success with him in the bottom lane.
Okay, someone went bot lane with him and did well, therefore his best role is bottom lane? I'm confused.
Of course, just because one person is doing it doesn't mean by default that he's now not
okay, good. At least he admits how retarded that was.
A mid laner, and it doesn't even mean that he won't be good in the bottom lane either. There's just still so much to unpack about him. A concern that day one Akshan players had about him that was voiced heavily is the fact that his attack speed and damage felt clunky and
yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty unfortunate. Fucking trying to play with the 0% attack speed and the E felt very awkward at first, but then you just get used to it. I'm glad they didn't buff the swing, honestly.
very low. But again, that was kind of part of his design. Champions are supposed to have a power budget, and with his insane utility, it wasn't going to be loaded into attack speed and high damage. The very thing that they wanted to avoid because of power budget constraints is now a strong suit of his. He now does.
No, because that was purely just their judgment from internal testing. The moment you saw that Akshan was absolutely terrible. I mean, again, they have at maximum, hundreds of games in internal testing, whereas on live, the first day that Akshan was out, it was, hundreds of thousands or millions of games that were played. So that was purely their judgment and then they were wrong. They were wrong. He didn't need to have super low damage. He didn't need to have super fucking low durability, right? They buffed his HP, they buffed his fucking auto attacks, blah blah blah. That it was just they were just wrong. Like they were, and so okay, there we go. Then he got buffed. Whoopee, not that difficult to understand.
Does competitive damage and has top tier utility. So what's his weakness then? Why was the
incredible unreliability, instantly dead if anyone jumps on top of him, gets blocked by everything in the entire game, has very terrible scaling and DPS because of his auto attack speed and his fucking passive double attack and shit. Can't kite at all. He just can't kite. I mean, I could go on again. He can't fucking do shit in team fights at all. His only real purpose mid and late game is to just sort of run around, hope that somebody is alone so he can just pick them off, and that's it.
Approach not to just give us time to figure out how to play him regardless of the bad win rate.
It's been a month. I mean, is a month not enough to be pretty comfortable with what he's gonna be like?
Champions are so complicated compared to the likes of Malphite or Rammus. There's no way that we can master it in one day. Are we really so sure that even half
Yeah, one day, not 1 month. It's literally been a full month.
Of all Akshan players in solo queue week 1 knew that you can strategically cancel an auto attack to gain movement speed? That's such a good little part of his kit that
that would not have changed him from being 36% to 50% win rate. I'm gonna keep saying this. It's these small optimizations that are apparently enough to make him somehow go from being terrible to good is kind of ridiculous.
They started to see the best players take advantage of now. If we are going to make overloaded kits, it's probably also going to take longer to learn how to play that champion. It's possible that his stealth is not even being utilized nearly well enough. This is a Teemo passive on steroids, but
Teemo, oh my god, dude. Teemo, oh my god. It's 750 radius. You can see him from 750 units away. Literally, there is no way that if you are sitting in your bot lane, right? You're sitting in the middle of bot lane, you will see him pretty much the moment he comes out of brush from the river. Literally, they're just, oh my god, man. Whatever. Just keep going.
Seldom do I see Akshan players waiting and stealthing into the lane like a Teemo would. You can literally
Really? I mean, that happens all the... Okay, whatever.
Run by the minion wave, and the enemy team will think that there's full vision there, especially for solo queue, where people are constantly alt-tabbed, barely paying attention, not watching the minimap. You're going to be able to camp the lane and get so many free kills, yet I don't see...
And then be useless in late game because your damage is completely unreliable, and you have no DPS, and all your shit's blocked by everything.
Anyone do this just yet. Give it a few more weeks, and you'll probably hate playing against this ability. Hopefully we see some real change soon. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you.
Yeah, once again, I mean, I like this guy's videos. I think he makes good stuff. It's obvious. He obviously puts a lot of work into this, but it's just so disingenuous, the amount of, I mean, everything that I said of him. I mean, calling Akshan's calling it a better Teemo passive or a perma stealth, it's just, oh my god, man. it's just it's insane. It's insane. But yeah, I don't know. I just had to get this fucking out there because I could not stand how many videos and how many people fucking circle jerk this idea of every new champion is just better and there's nothing you can do about it and blah blah blah. And no other fucking thing can beat them and it's just yeah. So thanks, Con.